The Bobby O Show.
Welcome to a very special one-hour edition of The Bobby O Show. My name is Bobo Potsner, and the topic we have for today is very important to me and those of us who are in Israel, and the panelists I have today who are my guests, because things are falling apart in the world, and poor Israel. I thank Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, for the speech he gave last night, which was superb, but I woke up this morning and heard about a special warning from the United States State Department of, quote, a worldwide caution alert as tensions in the Mideast rise. They say to beware of increased caution. I know that synagogues around the country are being watched more carefully, as well as mosques and other religious institutions. 2 weeks ago, on October 7th, Israel had what many are saying is analogous to our 9/11. People were at a festival of peace and love in Israel, many young people, when a terrorist group that controls Palestine, known as Hamas, began a terrorist attack resulting in at least 260 deaths of young people. But not only were there deaths, and there's no good way, I guess, to have a death, but to have beheadings and killing people in front of family and vice versa, and family members watching different things was horrible and is horrible. More than 1,300 people in the numbers. Who knows how accurate the numbers are? Could be higher. Of Israelis have died. There are apparently 200 hostages, some of whom are Americans. And I heard this morning on the news that the representative of Hamas said, quote, most of the hostages are still alive. What an ominous kind of comment. So now we have a situation where Israel has done what it should do, in my opinion, but we'll hear from our guests as well, to reasonably retaliate in a military action against Hamas in Gaza. And it's caused deaths on the Palestinian side. And some of the sad things we'll talk about are that Hamas is the terrorist group that runs Gaza, where the Palestinians are. But there are many good Palestinians who are innocent bystanders who are being dominated. But we'll get into that issue a little bit later on. But this is a very hard topic for me as a Jewish boy who was bar mitzvahed at Beth Israel Synagogue in Derby, Connecticut many years ago. But luckily, I have with me three superb individuals who are very knowledgeable in various aspects of the topic for today. They're friends. I consider them to be friends and professional friends, personal friends, you name it. And they're going to help me and help us get through to the best we can this very difficult topic. And I'm going to introduce all three of them and then have them each introduce themselves a little bit. And then we'll get into a conversation as best we can. We have Rabbi John Haddon, did my son's bar mitzvah, did a lot of things for our family. He's a wonderful human being and a great guy. Dr. Sidney Horowitz, who I know personally and professionally. He is well respected as a mental health professional in the state of Connecticut. And Dr. Dworkin, who went to Hebrew school with me, is my dentist. And is very much involved in the Jewish Federation in New Haven, Connecticut. So, gentlemen, let's all say hello. And I should say one more thing. Representative Amy Berger-Javala is my state representative in Connecticut, was going to try to appear, but she got called away at some meetings. So, unfortunately, the one lady we had is not going to be with us today. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi, why don't we start with you introducing yourself? And if anyone wants to make an opening statement or whatever, we'll go around Rabbi first, and we'll go to Jay, and then Dr. Horowitz.
Thank you so much, Bob. You know, I am a true Ohev Yisrael, a lover of Israel. To be a Reform rabbi, we spend 1 year in Israel. And I was so blessed to have spent 1975 and 1976 there. And I've since have gone back 11 times. God willing, my wife, Jean, and I are going to go back in February for a cultural tour of Israel. We're so much hoping that there will be peace in the land and we'll be able to go. And Bob, it's just a great honor to be on this program, and it's a great honor to know you. Your heart is always in the right place. I just would like to share something that came in very recently. A dear friend and colleague of our daughter, Dr. Abby Wellington, is an Israeli-American, Dr. Gal Altberg, with whom she studied at Jefferson Medical School. And Gal recently posted these words on Facebook, literally from 48 hours ago. Quote, "The stories from this war will scar us forever. Israel's population is so small that deaths have hit all of us. 10-month-old twins left crying for 16 hours while their parents are shot dead near them. Whole entire families butchered while hugging in bed, burned in their homes, or massacred while running. Beautiful young people massacred while dancing for peace. A young girl watches her father and his girlfriend shot while her mother is on the phone trying to calm her down. Our hearts are aching in ways that are unimaginable. A deja vu from stories we heard only from the Holocaust. So this isn't about Palestine or Israel. What has happened to us is an act only monsters are capable of doing. The same monsters who take millions from their fellow Palestinians. Money given by the world to advance education, technology, health in Gaza. Instead, their own people are deprived from basic human needs generations and generations, and they breed monsters from that day one. They're told to kill Jews. Excuse me. I guess I'm very choked up. I never imagined living in a place where in the last 10 days, 6,700 rockets will explode over our heads, thanks to our Iron Dome, which are intercepting most of them. But for the past 10 days, I have seen my country rise up and ready to fight. Civilians cooking for soldiers, placing refugees from their homes that were burned and destroyed, organizing clothes, toys, diapers for displaced families, doctors working endless hours to train medical units with life-saving procedures, and yet the funerals are still occurring. The bombs are still exploding. The kids are still not allowed to return to school safely. It's time the world understands we are here to stay because there is no other place. Hamas is an extremist, monstrous terror organization that only torments its own people on a daily basis, but now has performed despicable acts against Jews similar to those from the Holocaust. And she concludes, we are not okay, but we will be okay. And Bob, we say we Jews are the prisoners of hope, the prisoners of Hatikva, and we will be okay. Thank
Rabbi,
you.
that's very well stated. And by the way, the national anthem of Israel is Hatikva, which I believe means the hope, right?
The hope.
The hope. And the other thing I want to say before I go on to Jay is that I heard this morning on the news that there was, I forget whether it was Israel or the United States, sent over food and other necessities for the people of Palestine on the condition that it did not get taken by Hamas. And apparently Hamas stole a lot of that item. So her point is very well taken. Thank you for that statement, Rabbi. Dr. J, or Jay, I call him Dr. J. Dr. J.
Thank you, Rabbi, for those comments. And as I reflect about the Holocaust, I want to just share this story. About 6-7 years ago, because I grew up in a household where Israel was so important, the history of the Holocaust, many relatives died in the Holocaust. I'm named after two of my uncles. It was important for me that my children understand and, quote, never forget. And so about 8 years ago, we embarked with my kids and actually my neighbors, and we went to Poland. And we went back to the village where my grandmother came from, of which there are no Jewish people left, and did a lot of background work. And we found out that there was a site that someone had memorialized about 50 years ago, deep in the woods behind a World War I cemetery. And I had a guide take us through the town of Babova, but also to this site. And we hiked through the woods, and we approached this stone wall that was made and an iron gate with a Jewish star and a plaque inside this stone wall in Polish that our guide read to us, said, "Here Hitler brutally murdered the 770 Jews of Babova in one day." And in that pit were my great uncles and all my cousins, and I wept, and we said Kaddish. And it dawned on me that here we are again. I was taught never forget, never forget, never again. And then here we are again. That life and the world can be that evil, that people can be slaughtered in their homes and in their beds, is beyond me. I read, which many of you may have read, there was an Arab Israeli doctor helping on the ground in the South on that Saturday, October 7th. And a Hamas person faked being hurt, and the doctor approached, and they murdered the doctor and then hung him from a lamppost, and he hung there for 9 hours. Who does this? This is what we went through with Hitler. And I can't believe that the human condition can get to that level. And that may speak to your next guest, who may be able to create an explanation for that.
Jay, and very well stated. And as you made your comments, I'm thinking to myself, as bad as the Holocaust was, it's almost as bad to hear people today saying the Holocaust did not happen. That Meshuggah, I can't say the word. There's a word because of B that I won't, and ends with a T I won't say, but I also throw myself off my show. But that makes it even worse. And my daughter has a very close friend who was parents were born in Poland, and they took my daughter, your patient, also my daughter Jessica, to Poland, and I gave Jessica a Star of David. "Oh, Dad, why are you giving me the star?" I said, "Just take it with you." She went to one of the concentration camps, and she put it on. And she
Bob,
told
if I
me,
may interrupt for just a moment. When I was in rabbinical school, I had a great historian, Martin Cohn, who was my teacher, and he said to us, "Gentlemen, the bigger the lie, the better the chances are people will believe you." And unfortunately and tragically, that's what we're hearing right now. Hamas can lie, the greatest lie in the world. And unfortunately, there are millions and millions of people who believe it. The bigger the lie, the better the chances people will believe you.
well,
So
I hate to be even a little humorous, but George Costanza on Seinfeld once said, "If you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth."
Yeah.
In your own mind.
So we have to stand up to
Yep.
untruth.
Sidney, my friend, help us out. We're struggling here. What do you want to tell us before we get into our dialogue? What opening statement do you think you want to make?
I think we're already into our dialogue. I want to thank Jay and the Rabbi and you, Bob, for inviting me in and for the comments that were already made. I'm here wearing at least two hats. One is a professional hat and the other is a personal hat. A personal hat that I've struggled to share, but I think I ought to. My late mother-in-law was in concentration camp. Her parents were killed. One of her sisters was killed. I know about those stories. I've heard them. I've seen them in my patients. I'm also personally involved, as my grandmother's cousin was one of the founders of Israel, Beryl Katz-Nielsen. And I've been reading some books about him, and this is not the way Zionism was supposed to work in terms of its good neighbor policy. So personally, I'm invested because it touches me as a Jew. It touches me as a parent. It touches me as a grandparent, and I worry about the world. I worry about the world in general because of so much that's going on, but I particularly worry about what's happening right now in the Middle East and with Israel, a place that, of course, I have visited. I'm also here professionally. I've been a clinical and forensic psychologist for well over 45 years, and I've been involved in understanding people's worries, people's sorrows, and what it does to the mind, what it does to the body, what it does to our reality, and how it distorts us. I'm involved because I think about how people heal. I'm not here as a professional to point fingers at other people, although internally, if I listen to myself think, I'm really furious. But what overrides my fury is my fear. And what overrides all of that is my sense of helplessness as to what can I do as an individual? What can we do as a collective? What am I asking for with the world on how to be able to respond to the craziness that seems to be spreading in a malignant fashion? So that's why I'm present. And I enjoyed our preliminary conversation before we went on air. And I'm sure I'm going to learn from the other people who are here. I'm hoping we come up with answers, but I know we can't. But it's not that. I think sometimes sharing what we know, taking it away from just our inner thoughts, has a healing component to it. So I'm here selfishly, and that it helps me think and process, and that those individuals who may watch or listen to what we're talking about may also find this helpful for them to think about as well. So thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. And I want to say that I have a selfish reason for doing this show. Not only just I want to get the message out to our viewing audience, but also I thought having the four of us talk together, and I picked you particular who I wanted to talk to help me get through this tough time, because I'm having difficulty, as we all are. And I thought this kind of conversation might help us. I made a mistake last night, and Dr. Horowitz, Sidney knows, I call him Sidney. Sidney knows me from my professional life, and he knows I'm always as prepared as any lawyer could be. So, of course, in getting on this part of my life, a TV show, I thought I'd better look at and read the Hamas covenant, which I really shouldn't have. I did it because I wanted to see what it said, to make sure what I'm told in the papers, in the media. By the way, the media I'm really down on. We'll talk about that later on as part of our discussion. But I wanted to read it, and I got through about a third of it, and then I couldn't read anymore. But I just wanted to read a couple of items from it. It's called the Hamas Covenant, 1988, the Covenant of the Islamic Resistance Movement. And I'm going to pick a few comments. Number one, in their opening, it says, and what people say about what they feel about the Jews is true, and is it clearly true. Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. That rocked my world when I read that. And they have in a section called "In the Name of the Most Merciful Allah." Our struggle against the Jews is very great and very serious. It needs all sincere efforts. It is a step that inevitably should be followed by other steps. Number three, and I'm cutting and pasting, so you're gonna. It's not flowing necessarily, but in Article 6 it says, the Islamic Resistance Movement is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose allegiance to Allah, and whose way of life is Islam. It strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. I have two more. Moreover, if the links have been distant from each other, and if obstacles placed by those who are the lackeys of Zionism in the way of fighters obstructed the continuation of the struggle, the Islamic Resistance Movement aspires to the realization of Allah's promise, no matter how long that should take. And the final, I think, two quotes. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews, when the Jew will hide behind stones and trees. This is where I had a tough time reading on. And then I'm not going to read any further. I can't do any more of this. So when people, and there's a quote I didn't read to you, in which essentially they say that they don't want the world to try to negotiate or to reach peace, because there can be no peace. So I read those quotes to everybody because people I don't think know how bad it is and what their goals and objectives are and why it is so important, in my opinion, that Israel defend itself. Anyone want to jump in at this point?
Bob, just a real quick remark. Thank you for what you just said. You know, Yasser Arafat, in retrospect, is looked upon as kind of a moderate compared to Hamas. And yet I remember very clearly his words. He said, "We will accept a two-state solution as the first step in dismantling the Jewish state." Now that's a moderate Palestinian speaking. We will accept a two-state solution as the first step in obliterating the Jewish state, dismantling the Jewish state. With such moderation, unfortunately, Bob and all of us, we have to keep our guns loaded. And thank God, the one difference between now and the Kishinev pogroms and the Holocaust and the Romans and the Saracens and all the other groups that tried to destroy us, this time we Jews fight back with real bullets. And believe me, Bob, as somebody who has devoted his entire life to peace, it breaks my heart to say those words. But it's not in our tradition to turn the other cheek. In this case, we have to fight back. I am hoping that whatever fight there will be a short one without the loss of civilian lives to the degree that we can. But at the end of all this, we Jews have to remain strong. We're not going to turn the other cheek. That is not our tradition.
Anyone else have a comment before I go to my next question?
I do. I'm not a political scientist, and I don't pretend to be. But I'm somebody that believes strongly in context. And so, again, I have two opinions that are wrestling in my head. One is, as a Jew and as a proud Jew and as a terrified Jew, I shuddered to think about what you read, Bob, about the goals of Hamas and about the distortion that some fringe groups use for what are benign Islamic views. I'm terrified about that. The other is that I need to be aware of context. The issues that are going on right now have been going on for many years and predate this horrific event. And I can't lose sight of that. And the battling in my mind is that, yes, but this horrific event took place, and I can't sit back and just think about the larger dominoes of what's going on with Iran and what's going on right now with Russia's involvement, Putin's comments or Biden's comments about Putin, or about China's involvement, or about how we have supplied military-grade weapons to people who are now our enemies. And I can go on and on. So there's a context that I need to think about it. But it doesn't erase the idea that I am terrified of what's happening right now. And I have a great amount of empathy for the Palestinians who are involved, who have done nothing that is wrong. I have no sympathy, however, for the Hamas terrorists, who I think should be obliterated, although they will be replaced by Iran, I worry. But I wanted to add that sense that this is a much larger contextual issue that right now has a focal point that is overwhelmingly disturbing.
Jay, do you have anything you want to say before I go on?
Yeah. So in talking to a lot of friends and family, and you all may have heard the saying, is that people say, well, we can't go in, to cross the border. We need to get our hostages back. We need to negotiate. You're seeing that on some of the media stations and the talking heads. Let's create a peace. Let's get humanitarian aid in. But just by reading that charter, and it has been revised, I think a few years ago, Hamas's goal is the obliteration of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Israel, and so when I listen to these friends and family and talking heads, the one side of me is, pacifist, which I am, liberal leaning, don't want to see anybody die. And I've never been faced with this conflict of a real war. Vietnam, I was too young. The Yom Kippur War, I was too young. And as I told my son, who wants to be empathetic to all those that are dying, this is the time you have to choose a side. Unfortunately, you can't be sympathetic on both sides because those are our brothers and sisters the guns are pointed to at their head. We have, and because of that charter, Israel has no choice, and Jews around the world have no choice but to support some kind of incursion and create an elimination of Hamas and a regime change. That being said, when this is all over, I do believe that Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States will work extremely hard to secure a true Palestinian state that is economically feasible and secure, that allows for secure borders of Israel. And like I'm making, contributions to Israel now, I'd be happy to support a Palestinian state that's going to be an economic trading partner with Israel. But unfortunately, today, because of what you, Bob, had just alluded to, we have no choice but to pick up arms. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I've never said that in my life. This is my first war that I have to metaphorically somehow choose a side. And and I had this conversation with my son, who said, well, you're giving all this money to Israel. Can't we give a little to some of the Palestinians who are, I said, I can't do that, because that could have been a gun pointed to your head. You're 26. You just happened to be born, and by chance your family came from Europe to here. They could have gone to Israel, and that could have been your temple, or that could have been you who were slaughtered at that music festival.
Sure.
I have to choose.
Jay, it's interesting that a couple comments of what you've said. First of all, I know the four people on this screen today are not, quote, hawks. These are not right-wing Meshuggahs who we're not. And to hear Jay Dworkin and Sidney and Rabbi Haddon speak as they are, this is because this is a unique set of circumstances, mostly because, or largely because, of the covenant I just read to you, but also this is not the United States being 1,000 miles away from whoever did 9/11. It's right in their backyard. That's number one. I want to say that. Number two,
If I may jump in too.
Sure.
Jay's remarks are so touching. Just touches my heart. I'm so glad I'm on this program. But Jay, think of the Holocaust. What was the Jewish reaction to the death of 6 million of our brothers and sisters? Did we as Jews go into Europe and attack them? You know what we did after the Holocaust? We rebuilt, we became strengthened. That's our reaction to tragedy. We want to build a better world. We don't want the destruction of innocence once and for all. Let's say that. We don't want the death of anyone. But sometimes you just have to stand up. But our reaction to the Holocaust, the worst tragedy of the Jewish people, what did we do? We built the state of Israel. We built the synagogues in America. We rebuilt Europe, for God's sakes. After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we gave billions to Japan, and Japan has been our ally now for the last 78 years.
And one thing, Jay, you said, and you said it with good intention, but you said, and when, quote, when this is all over, unquote. And I'm thinking, well, it's been a couple of thousand years at least. And I don't know, even if we get past this situation, I don't know if it will ever, quote, be all over, but I think it's time for a very...
I'll tell you why I think that, briefly, Bob, is that Bibi Netanyahu got a problem in Israel. He's a short-term head of state. We all know that. President Biden went in to rescue him and rescue Israel. but particularly rescue Bibi, to create some kind of sense of government there united, which would be nice if our country could do that, at least temporarily, while we get through this issue, but that's not happening.
Right.
But I think, and this is just my opinion, there were some strings attached. And President Biden said to Bibi, when this is all over, there's no room for dissension. We need to create a sense of peace. And just like President Abbas made a statement on Reuters that said Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people, he acknowledged the killing, true on both sides, but he acknowledged the massacre that occurred in Israel. And I think at the end, the Israelis don't want, and they made a statement this morning by the Defense Force, we want nothing to do with Gaza when this is over. It will be the Arab nations who have a sense of responsibility to get involved here for the first time and rule that area and create a true Palestinian state. And I think Joe Biden has string attached to to Netanyahu, and I hope and pray that when this is over, the Palestinians and Gaza, they build beautiful Marriott hotels along the Gaza seacoast, just like they have in Tel Aviv. And people go on vacation and not go to war. They get education, but they don't go to war.
Sidney, your reaction?
Did we lose?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
I think Bob went into his bomb shelter.
okay.
So, and that may well be appropriate. My reaction is this. I also have very strong feelings, as both of you have stated, and as Bob has stated as well. But I'm also aware that I'm speaking with feelings more than facts. What I can talk about is what can I do, what can we all do while we wait for the people who are empowered to be able to make these decisions. I don't know, I have my feelings about Bibi Netanyahu. I have strong feelings about the Times article about his wife. I have feelings about all these people, but I have no idea how factual, what the facts are that they're based on. I can conjecture. But what I think about, and at some point in our discussion, I'd like to think about what does living under the penumbra of this disaster, of this crisis, what does it do to us? What does it do to us as adults? What does it do to our children? What does it do to our grandchildren? What are the multi-generational effects of trauma? And what are the different ways that we can find ways so we can cope with it? So when this is over, or at least this part of the crisis is over, because anti-Semitism will exist long time. But when this particular crisis abates, we're going to all be left with elements of what some of us refer to as post-traumatic stress. We're all going to be left with feelings of us against them. And whether we rebuild or not, it takes a very long time, even now, even though I believe that Germany, for example, has evolved in so many ways politically, ethically, and morally. When I have a patient whose grandparents are of a certain age, my first thought is, I wonder if they were Nazis. These things last inside of us.
Yeah.
And if we don't find a way to address that in a meaningful way, then we become victims, even though we're not there in Israel ourselves.
Sidney, if I may just jump in for just a moment, what we need right now more than anything else is a sense of community to strengthen us. This is the time for Jews to affiliate with synagogues if they haven't been affiliated. This is the time to go to rallies. And it's also a time to create joy. I find in my own life, I cannot be helpful to anyone if I am wringing my hands and I'm in tears. And I might feel that way in my own heart. But, there's an expression in the Talmud that says Jews learn how to laugh and cry out of the same eyes at the same time. We have to remain strong. We have to somehow figure out, even during this time of crisis and pain, and you mentioned fear, and believe me, I feel the fear too. But I find that just a hug, hugs, community, creating joy is the best antidote to pain and despair. And I tell you, I am so heartened when I go to a rally and I see our Christian friends there. And I've even seen a few women with the hijab who are our friends. If Muslim Americans could speak up and defend their Jewish fellow American partners, it would be so strengthening for us. We need Christians and Muslims in large numbers to come to our aid at this time. We have been there for you. We would be there for you. You know, I'm reminded of that incredible line. Forgive me for quoting so much, but I'm a quoter. But from Pastor Niemöller, who was imprisoned by the Nazis, were fighting back, and he said these words: "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." If we could just convince good people all around our country and throughout the world at this time to come to our Jewish aid, that's what we need now more than anything else. And I know the viewers of this program are our friends, are members of our community. Give your Jewish friends a hug. That's what we need now more than
Rabbi, that quote I've heard many times from you actually is a great quote, and it's so true. And your comment before about Jews joining synagogues again, and it's not just the Jewish religions, other religions where people are perhaps not as affiliated as they used to be.
go to their churches, go to their mosques.
Right. The synagogues are closing down because there's not enough membership. And I think that's a very important point. I want to talk about one thing, and I'm sorry I missed you folks for a little while. I did lose connection, but anti-Semitism. And I'm not sure if you got into that the few minutes I was off, but it is so bothersome to me when I heard about the hospital in Gaza that got bombed. I knew as soon as I heard about the report, it's going to be blamed on the Jews. It's going to be blamed on Israel. And I was sick at MSNBC, which I watch all the time because they had a reporter on there who was so pro, I don't want to say Palestinian, but pro-Gaza versus anti-Israel. It made me sick. And then the reports came out objectively that it was a misfire from a jihad, from a terrorist that caused the death. And even still, a United States senator was still not apologizing for her words against Israel. Anti-Semitism is a huge component part of where we are now. And Jews and Israel are we're getting a lot of support, no doubt about it, but not what it should be because anti-Semitism reigns supreme. Any comments, anybody on that comment?
I just want to touch on Sidney's comment on the PTS, and then I'll come back to that. But I'm you all know, in touch with a emissary, an exchange student, lived with us for a year. And I can only imagine, she's got 4 children under the age of 8. They run to a bomb shelter when they see the sirens go off and bombs overhead. Her husband's off at the war, brother and sister-in-law off at the war. You know, what are the ramifications? Will she ever feel safe? Okay, her brother went to 3 funerals last Thursday of young people. How can they ever feel safe? And yes, they need to take Hamas out, but will they ever feel safe? That psychological component, it's going to be so looming. And as President Biden said when he met with Netanyahu and talked about how to channel that anger, because maybe we didn't do it so well in 9/11. I don't know how one would channel their anger after living and being boots on the ground there. That's that piece. In terms of anti-Semitism, it's there. It rears its head up. Isn't it sad that my son said to me, because I was going to be coming into New York this weekend, as I had my Jewish star out the other day, just because it was out of my shirt, he said, "Dad, tuck that in. You don't want to have that out when you come into New York." Or I have a flagpole, and for Ukraine, I flew the Ukrainian flag in sympathy of which I don't see a lot of Israeli flags on Facebook like we did for Ukraine and France among people who aren't Jewish. That's another point. But I'm afraid, or my family doesn't want me to fly the Israeli flag because of potential repercussions. That's not a good thing, and that's unfortunate. And I don't have an answer. Maybe someone else.
Let me make a comment if I can, Jay, because you touch on something. I'm going to channel my inner geek. There's something called epigenetics, and what we know is our genes are already formed, and they exist. But we know that environmental issues, that those things happening around us, can shape the expression of our genes. Individuals who are exposed to a traumatogenic event, something that is outside the ordinary, it can change forever how they think, how they feel, how they process. And I imagine that the children who are living in harm's way and in shelters are going to be faced with these expressions that I mentioned about post-traumatic stress, where they startle and they're anxious and for a very long time. And maybe there are good treatments that will be available if they survive that. But if I add parenthetically, it's not just there that this is happening. In our own country, without changing the script of where we are, we have children and adults who are living in environments and are being treated so poorly that they too are having the modification of their genes being affected. Those who live in poverty, those who live with racism, those who live with sexism. When I hear people making statements about that they took Israel away from the Israelis and they should have it back, I think about the Native Americans and how they must feel in this country, and so on. So yes, I'm specifically focused right now on my feelings and my thoughts about what's happening in Israel and the trauma that they're experiencing directly, or the secondhand smoke of what we're breathing in.
I think we may have lost Sidney for a moment, but
No,
Sidney,
Sidney, you're back with us.
Yeah, there was, I apologize. There was a phone call that I needed to block out.
That's okay.
But,
That's
so
okay.
these are, this is affecting not just our feelings, it's affecting our biochemistry. It will be a multi-generational trauma. It will exist not just for the people now, but for our children and their children. And we need to be very careful about protecting against the craziness of Hamas and its motivation. And we need to protect against that in all military appropriate ways. But where I have knowledge about is that this is affecting our physical, emotional, psychological, cognitive functioning in so many ways. And we need to not only get together as a community, which I completely applaud, Rabbi, but we need to be able to also allow for healing to be encouraged, not just to talk about the war whoop, putting on the face paint of saying, we got to kill those people. That doesn't calm us down. We need to think about healing, which is not necessarily forgiveness, but it's the idea of accepting that we have this sword of Damocles hanging over us, and how do we cope with the sense of helplessness and despair that we're all feeling.
Sidney, as a follow-up to that by analogy, I have a very close friend who is and was a teacher. She survived at Sandy Hook. She was in the classroom next door to where the real tragedy happened. And she has worked hard and her family's worked hard. And she's one example of a lady who's worked hard and is working at healing. But every single day we talk, every time we talk, there's discussion about that. And that's an example of analogy where it doesn't happen quickly. And that's 10, 12 years ago.
Bob, I was listening to your remarks and Sidney's remarks. I'm reminded of Harold Kushner, my dear friend, who passed away this past year, and he wrote a book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. It's not entitled Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, because we don't know why sometimes. In fact, we usually generally don't know. But he wrote When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And I have found the only way to cope with hatred and to cope with sadness and despair is to reach out to other people. Kushner lost his 13-year-old child to this terrible disease called pygeria. And he reached out and he found parents who had lost 2 children. He reached out, he helped other people. Maybe that's the best way we can cope with anti-Semitism. We can't make the haters not hate us. You know, Father Edward Flannery wrote a wonderful book. I wish everybody would read it. It's called The Anguish of the Jews. And he puts on the first page, there's one fact about anti-Semitism. It has nothing to do with Jewish misconduct. Nothing to do with Jewish misconduct. People hate us not because they're looking down at us, Bob. They hate us because they have to look up at us. Because we're successful. Because we make the world a better place. Every rabbi, every Jew that I know, if they know no other Hebrew, they know 2 words, tikkun olam, repair of the world. That's the way we cope with anti-Semitism.
You know, I think this is a perfect time. We were going to have, there's a Jewish prayer called the Mishiberach. And it's a prayer for healing. And in fact, every high holiday, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the rabbi at the synagogue will say, who here has someone they want to get prayers for healing?
Every Shabbos, every
right,
Shabbat.
Every Shabbat. Okay, well, you go more often than I do, Jay. I'm sorry, but it's not just physical healing; it's mental health. And I'm going to have the rabbi play for us his prayer now. I think it's a perfect time because we all need, the 4 of us and the rest of the world, healing. Rabbi, would you mind?
Not at all, Bob. You know, I'm doing a service tonight, and I'm saying the following. According to Israel's Ministry of Health, 309 people injured in the October 7 attacks are still hospitalized. Of these, 80 are in serious condition, 159 in moderate condition, 70 in good condition. A total of 4,629 injured individuals have been treated at hospitals around the country. And we also pray for the injured Palestinian people. Of course, we pray for them. We want health restored to all of us. Mi sheberach avoteinu mikor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Sheberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
You know, Rabbi, as you know, typically at services, we say an English prayer or in Hebrew prayer for the state of Israel. And I want to just do a shortened version of that. I think it's appropriate for us at this point in time. And after we do that, we're going to have each person have a chance to do some sort of wrap up because we have about a little less than 8 minutes to go in the show. But an English prayer for the state of Israel, and I'll read part of it. Our Father in heaven, rock and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, the first manifestation of the approach of our redemption. Shield it with your loving kindness, envelop it in your peace, and bestow your light and truth upon its leaders, ministers, and advisors, and grace them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Grant them deliverance, and adorn them in a mantle of victory. Ordain peace in the land and grant its inhabitants eternal happiness. Lead them swiftly and upright to your city Zion and to Jerusalem, the abode of your name, as is written in the Torah of your servant Moses. And I will. There's more to the prayer, but that's the highlight of what I'll read today. And I think it's a wonderful prayer. And I'm glad to see that Israel, as Jay has mentioned before, has had some political issues the last several months, and they're putting it aside now to deal with the hard issue of dealing with the outside enemy. But at the end of the day, when this is all, this chapter is done, we need to get things together, and we have to all come together as Jews, as Christians, as everyone in this world. Any comments by anybody at this point in time?
I'm going to make a comment, which is self-care during this time is extraordinarily important. And as the rabbi pointed out, maintaining social contact with others. But I'm going to add a couple of other brief comments. One is individuals, I think, should really reduce the amount of time that they spend looking at social media, watching NBC and CNN and Fox and all the stations. Some people are glued to it. This will certainly, to put it bluntly, will mess with your head. The second is that taking deep breaths is very helpful. It reduces cortisol. So breathing in through your nose to the count of 5, breathing out through your mouth through the count of 7, slowly, and doing that 10 times, 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, actually reduces your blood pressure. It slows down your heart rate. It allows you to calm down, because if you rent space in your head all the time to all the trauma that's going on, even when we win, whatever that means, you will lose, because the wear and tear on your body and on your mind and on your soul will be so great. So, and protect your children. Your children are hearing these things from school friends or from social media. Talk with them. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Speak in a developmentally appropriate fashion. If they're showing signs of stress, get help. Early intervention is a lot better than terminal treatment. And so reach out to your pediatrician, to your spiritual counselor, to a psychologist, to somebody, because once these stress issues take hold, they can certainly get worse, and they're much harder for intervention. Wow.
That's very moving and helpful. When I decided to do the show, I did it for reasons that I mentioned a little bit before, but having been through this with the four of us together, I feel better. I feel a little better today because of what you're saying, the sharing of the thinking about things, and we've had a chance to talk as opposed to watch TV and have others tell us what they think. So I appreciate what we've done together, and I suggest that even though you said don't look at the social media too much, I would suggest that those of you who have media links of whatever, Facebook, whatever, that you should put, I think, this show on, because I have found it very comforting to discuss the hard issues, but there's also these other issues to deal with, including the fact that everyone here on the show has indicated that our enemy is Hamas, not the good people of Palestine who are being, butchered themselves and used as body targets and safeguards. So I think that's been pretty helpful to me. Anybody have any comments about what?
Bob, all I'd like to say is that, Sidney, you can be my rabbi, and we rabbis need rabbis too. As everyone was speaking, I just want to conclude my remarks with this quote. I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate, but it's so important, from Ethics of the Fathers. In a place where no one else is acting human, you strive to be human. And that's what we're in the world right now. We have a lot of people who are acting inhumanly, but we as Jews, as Christians, as Muslims, of good people, we will act right.
So I'll just close with 2 comments. One, Bob, you and I had talked about conflation, to conflate, to make sure that everybody who's watching don't conflate Hamas with the rest of the Palestinian people. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. And the hope is that when this is over, the majority of the Palestinian people who want a state, who want to be economically feasible, that will exist. Number one. Number two is Israel needs support. They need jackets and shoes and boots, and they need money. And whatever way you feel compelled to give, please give. I wear my hat as a on the board of the Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven. There's an Israel fund for North American Federation. People can contribute to. It all goes towards humanitarian aid. Please give to Israel. They need it now.
Sidney,
Yes.
anything more that you want to say?
I'm sitting and I'm getting lost in the multiple thoughts that I have about how stimulating all of this is. I worry about when helplessness takes root, it leads to anxiety, depression, or anger. And the idea of what Jay said of doing something, of reaching out, whether it's a donation, whether it's a letter, whether it's speaking to friends and neighbors, but the idea of doing things keeps it from cluttering our thoughts and our feelings, and we're less likely to implode or explode. This is not a time to act irrationally. It's a time for careful thought.
Amen.
When my kids were very, very young, I always told them this lesson, and sometimes I think they listen, right? We all have kids, and maybe once in a while they'll listen. But one thing I taught my kids at a very young age is if you're in school and you see someone getting picked on or someone getting laughed at or someone getting mocked, you need to make sure that you're not someone who throws the darts. You have to be the one who says, no, that is the wrong thing to do. Don't do that. And if kids, and my daughter is now a special education teacher, and I don't know whether that came from my influence or the fact that my wife's a special ed teacher, but I think that lesson, always rang true. And it sort of rings true to me. And what we're saying is because we want help for Israel. Israel is always, and Jews have always given help to others who have been pushed around or mocked or treated poorly. And maybe there can be a silver line. Okay, Sidney, now I'm being the Bobby O who was the optimist. Maybe there could be a silver lining. Maybe we somehow, once we can get our hostages back, and it makes me so sick when I hear the UN saying, oh my God, we should have a ceasefire. Sure, give me my hostages back and we'll do that. But we have to be positive in how we go forward to make this a better world. And as John Lennon said, imagine. This has been Bobo Potsner. I am so honored that my three friends who I felt close to and with before, even closer now. Thank you, Sidney, Rabbi, Jay. And it's nice, Jay, to talk to you without having Novocaine in my mouth. Have a great day. This has been Bobby O. Welcome, and I hope you enjoyed the show and learned a lot. I certainly did. Shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Shalom.